yes, that of course puts in a lot of things into perspective. But let's also now take it forward. What happens from here onwards? Does Rahul Gandhi get disqualified? Joining us today, Tuhin, Sinha spokesperson of the BJP. Advocate Kirit is also joining us, an advocate. Tuhin, I'm going to come to you first because as per most of the leaders of the BJP, they have been saying that this is immediate grounds for disqualification as per the 2013 Supreme Court order. If that is the case, has and when will BJP then move the speaker and complain against Rahul and move for a disqualification from the parliament? Is that going to be the way forward?
Well, good evening, Megha. To the best of my understanding, the Honourable Lok Sabha Speaker would be waiting for a copy of the judgment of the trial court, and post that he will be taking his decision. So I think we will be waiting for the Honourable Speaker's decision. But I think the point over here is something bigger. Making disparaging remarks and loose talk has been the hallmark of Rahul Gandhi's politics. In this case, obviously, he went too far, where he denigrated a whole community, or if you don't call it a community, probably lakhs of people with the Modi surname. You also need to realize that a significant or most of these people belong to the OBC, one of the weaker sections of society. Some are Parsis, but when you denigrate all people with the Modi surname, imagine the level of thought process of the Gandhis. And even
but Tuhin, one of the things that the lawyer has just maintained, as we were speaking to Mr. Panwala, Tuhin, he said categorically that it needs to show in a court of law that there is a specific community which has been outraged, and there is no such Samaj called the Modi Samaj, Tuhin.
No, that is his lawyer's thought process. That is the reason why he couldn't secure a win for Mr. Gandhi. Because if you go to the court with such absurd logic, just imagine that you are humiliating. What did Rahul Gandhi say? Kya is desh mein sare Modi chor hai? Do you imagine that he is insulting, he's hurting the sentiments of everybody who carries the Modi surname? Can you imagine how denigrating it is? Worst part is that even today, both brother and sister have virtually justified the statement. Look at the tweets. They're saying they stand with the truth. What does that mean? Are they trying to justify the statement? All it needs is an acceptance that if you hurt the sentiments of lakhs of people, it needs an apology. But because of the stupid manner in which he denigrated Savarkar, calling him Maafi Veer, today he has dug his own hole. So are we to blame for his foolish thinking?
So what happens from here onwards? Sanket Yenagi, let's say he is going to appeal to the appellate court, as his legal counsels just told us that that's going to happen. But what really is going to change? Because at the end of it, Rahul Gandhi will still continue to contend that it was part of an election rally, and 2 years imprisonment that he managed to get today from the Surat court is the maximum sentence. He could have gotten away with a lower one.
Firstly, let me answer one by one. The first question, which Mr. Panwala has said, and the BJP spokesperson also has said that they would be moving to the speaker and all. Let me clarify the legal position. Till the appeal period is over, speaker cannot acquire a jurisdiction to issue a notice for the disqualification.
Okay.
There is a period prescribed for the appeal, and if during the appeal period the one who has been convicted doesn't approach the higher court and the order of conviction is not stayed, then the speaker will get a jurisdiction to deal with this matter. Till then, the speaker will have no jurisdiction at all in this matter. That is first aspect.
Mr. Yenagi, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted some clarification on that. Isn't it true that specifically the Supreme Court in 2013 in its order had scrapped that very specific of the RP Act, Section 8, Part 4, if I'm not mistaken, where it says that they can continue to appeal, and the Supreme Court categorically says that with immediate effect there is going to be suspension and disqualification?
No. Any order of conviction is appealable. And so long as the judgment of conviction is operating, the speaker will have the jurisdiction. Once it is stayed by the appellate court where it is appealed, the judgment and conviction order, that sentence it is called, that is stayed, it cannot be pressed into service. That is a legal position of it. And second aspect which I would like to deal with it is, let us understand how the Supreme Court has dealt with the definition of the defamation and the test for the defamation. Firstly, the Supreme Court in categorical judgments, in several judgments, says the whole speech have to be understood, not a particular sentence to be picked and chosen to be read in isolation. So if you read the entire speech, if you hear the entire speech, it makes a reference to Nirav Modi, it makes a reference to Lalit Modi,
Yes.
and also makes a reference to Prime Minister Modi. So, while referring to those who are already the fugitives, in fact, that is one Mr. Lalit Modi and Nirav Modi, he makes a reference to Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Why he says that sabhi Modi chor hai kya? Matlab, the word to be understood that he is making a reference to those Modis who have already been named in this speech. It cannot traverse beyond that. That is again a subject matter of interpretation. That is the first aspect of it.
Okay.
And the second aspect is, the procedural lapses which his advocate has pointed out, Mr. Panwala has pointed out, there has been no proper legal compliance by the judges, procedural irregularities, or the lack of procedural formalities which have been complied by the trial court. These are another point which Mr. Rahul Gandhi is very much eligible to obtain an interim order of stay. And the next question is, the Supreme Court time and again says, Section 499, which deals with the defamation, has to be read and understood in the light of Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, which deals with the right to speech and expression, fundamental right or the freedom of speech to expression. There are certain exemptions to this. So before going to that aspect, firstly, the gravity of the offense has to be understood or to be tested and weighed with an evidence. The gravity, how it is going to damage someone, how severe it is, how big it is to be ascertained. Number two, the damage caused to a particular person. Who is the person to whom the damage is caused? And the person whom the damage is caused, whether that person has approached the court or is called as the cause of action or the locus standi. For a problem caused to someone else or the damage caused to someone else cannot file a complaint. That is also the principle of locus standi, or the principle of cause of action it is called. Whether the person really has been caused with the damage. These are all.
But that's very interesting. On one hand, you are saying that it didn't mention the Prime Minister Modi. However, Rahul Gandhi's own counsel just said that the person who would have been aggrieved in this case would have been PM Modi, but he's not the one who's complained, hence someone else on his behalf cannot complain and say that they are the aggrieved person. So that itself seems to be contradictory. But Sinha, very interesting points which have been raised by a lawyer. And now I'd also like to remind our viewers that one of the things that the Surat court has said, that if Rahul Gandhi isn't punished today, it would send the wrong message to our society. Is he being punished more severely just to set a message to the society?
Well, first of all, I think Rahul Gandhi definitely needs better legal advice, because, if he had got better legal advice, he would not have landed this way. But, look at the history of this person. Even the courts mentioned this. There are so many instances where he has been a repeat offender, whether it was having to, apologize to the Supreme Court for falsely attributing certain words to the Supreme Court on the issue of Rafale. He also faced a defamation case in the case of RSS, where he said that RSS was behind Gandhi's killing. I am not aware of the status of the case, but 3 years back he had faced a legal case on that account also. So I think, there is a fundamental disconnect between Rahul Gandhi and Indian ethos, Indian sensibilities and Indian understanding of law. He needs to be a more responsible speaker, being in public life, and moreover the attitude. I mean, look at the perverse sense of self-entitlement where even today the brother and sister believe that they have done the right thing. There is no iota of regret or apology, and that is what should rattle the common public. This is the kind of person you have, in the opposition, leading the opposition.
Well, in that case, Mr. Yanagi, does it matter that Rahul Gandhi allegedly is a repeat offender? This is not the first time. In the past, who has misquoted the Supreme Court itself by saying Supreme Court has said Chaukidar chor hai. There have been several other instances, as Tuhin A has just said, saying that he is a repeat offender, which is why perhaps an example does need to be set. Does that matter in a specific court?
So in a case of a defamation, what has been said earlier will not have an influence in the next case. Each case has to be dealt in its own perspective, on its own evidence, on its own gravity. And the earlier statements will not influence the new statement. Earlier order or earlier case will not have an influence on the new case. It has to be dealt independently without being influenced by the previous cases.
Right.
Number one. And the second aspect is the Supreme Court. I'm just citing the Supreme Court points. I'm not expressing anyone's view. Supreme Court in several cases has said that if the statement is made that is in a public good, or public conduct deals with the public good, or speech is spoken about the public good, or spoken about the public conduct of a public servant, or about the conduct of a person touching any public question, or pertaining to something or some reports of the proceedings of the court, or about the merits of a case of conducting of the witnesses or the parties, or merits of the public performances of an individual, or bona fide censure, or bona fide accusation, bona fide imputation and conveying caution. These are all exceptions to the definition of the defamation. Firstly, one must understand that in the political
But that's very interesting. We'll have to wait and see, because that's one of the big things that Congress Gandhi's legal counsel has been saying, that it's part of a larger political campaign, and in a political campaign, taking potshots like this perhaps is acceptable. We'll have to, however, wait and see how it pans out in the appellate court, where we expect the legal team to take it to. However, thank you so much for joining us with your perspective on this. Tuhin Sinha, as always, as well as Sanket Yenagi for joining us on the show.